Your parents bought a house with a piano in it.
My parents lived in a smaller house when they had the 2 kids, and when I came along, I think they felt they needed to have a bigger house, and my father was sort of working his way up into the company he was working at the time, which is the Bay now, which was Simpson's.
Right.
And believe it or not, he was a fashion buyer for the store, but my family always gravitated towards art and music, more so art. But they hadn't been exposed to music as young people themselves, and I think when they saw the house and saw that there was a piano that came along with the house, it was the incentive to buy that house. So it's kind of funny.
That's great. So you paid extra for the piano, or?
No, I think the piano was sort of thrown in.
This is not the piano.
That's
here.
not the piano. No. Actually, that's my aunt and uncle's, which is very nice. They gave that to me.
And when did you start music lessons?
Well, I started music lessons in a lunchtime program in public school. I went to Brown School at Avenue Road in St. Clair.
Right. No,
and they had a sort of an itinerant music teacher that came at lunch hour. And it was a little frustrating, I remember, at the time, but I guess it sort of seeded, the thoughts about music in that you played at your desk on a little cardboard fold-out keyboard, and you got your 5 minutes of glory at the piano. There's about 10 kids in the class, and you didn't really get your lunch hour, or you didn't get to go outside and play. So it was always kind of, I wasn't so crazy about the classes, but anyway, so that was the initial. And then in grade 5 and 6, I started playing clarinet, even though I really wanted to play the flute. They kept pushing me to play violin and cello, and because they said I had a good ear, although I think they were telling everybody they had good ears to play the violins.
What is a good ear?
A good ear is basically you can sort of maybe sing on pitch, if we play... Well, that's a little high. But
I have no ear now.
But you can match the pitch, and you can tell intervals, sing up a couple of notes. I seem to be able to do that. So they tend to usually put someone who seems to have an aptitude for music to a string instrument, because the string instruments aren't pitched, and you have to find the pitches. And I didn't want to play a string instrument, and I really wanted some sort of shiny instrument, and all the flutes were gone and everything was gone, and at the end I just really wanted to be in the band, and the band teacher, his name was Mr. Yardley, I just remember this also clearly, and he wore a very funny toupee which he never put on properly.
They all did back then.
Yeah, it was just like, just stare at his toupee. How does he not know his toupee is reversed? But he brought his own clarinet for me to play, because I really wanted a band. And so that's what I played for 2 years at that public school, and then I went to a junior school, and he happened to be the same music teacher there. And
nice coincidence.
Yeah, it was nice. But at the end of grade 8, I went to a private girls' school, which was a horrendous change for me, because there was no music program, there was no art, and I was, really kind of floundering, because for me that was sort of already a bit of a creative, release doing music. So I got the seeds of music, early, but I got serious, I'd say, at about age 16, 17, about playing the piano, and I studied very, very hard for a number of years.
Then there came about with...
Yeah, then I had this tendonitis thing, because I was sitting I was sitting not a proper position at the piano, and I was playing for long hours, and blah, blah, blah. Created a problem with the tendonitis, and I had to take a sabbatical from the piano. I was going to have an operation done on my hand, and it was decided by various doctors that I was seeing that it would be better just to take a break from the piano, go somewhere warm, maybe that would help. And
so then you took a trip to San Francisco.
So I took the trip to San Francisco. I went with my cousin, and we went for about 3 weeks. And we were in the Bay Area and listening to a lot of jazz. And one of the groups happened to be Charles Mingus's group, which probably is one of the most powerful modern jazz groups that ever lived on this planet.
Absolutely.
He is a composer, and just he is a leader of all the, when you just think of all the musicians that came through his group, they were all just original stylists and voices. And the music was powerful and politically, there was something really there to grab onto.
Did you see yourself in that music?
Well,
how?
It was funny because when I heard that music, I was mesmerized because I thought they were all classical musicians. That's what I recognized because their expertise on their instruments was like so phenomenal. I thought, they've all studied classical music, and so I kept thinking, gosh, is there a way that I can, what I've learned, that I could go and do that? And of course, there's certain how do you say it, techniques and disciplines that you can draw from classical music, but it's a whole other mindset of the way you think about music. One is improvising, and one is creating what's already on the page, but trying to make it sound like it's improvised. It's very different. But and strangely enough, a musician that I later played with, Don Pullen, was the piano player. It's funny in life how these things happen, but profound things that I ended up making 4 records with him later, much later. But he was the piano player in that group. So, and I was really blown away by his playing. And I later said to him, it's because of those performances I heard in Mingus, and you were in the band. It's like, why I'm playing jazz? And he said, don't hold that against me.
Now, there are not, careful to ask this question, but and especially at that time, there were not a lot of female jazz musicians.
I mean, there was, Joanne Brackeen, and a few trumpet players, and there really, there hasn't been a history of, part of it too, they haven't been, it hasn't been documented. I mean, there was a period where, there was a lot of female big bands and such going out on the road, but during wartime and stuff, because musicians were enlisted, but there just wasn't the coverage, also. But yes, of course, it's been primarily a sort of a male-dominated scene.
So when did you decide, and why did you decide the saxophone and the soprano saxophone?
Well, that came about. That's a funny story how I got my saxophone, but
which happens to be right beside you.
Here she is, right here. I heard I was playing an alto, and I had my flute, and I had heard Steve Lacy, who's really kind of my mentor musician. I heard his playing of Thelonious Monk's music, and I was just mesmerized by the sound. And it just spoke to me, and I thought, maybe that's the horn I should play. It seemed closer to the flute, but I was just drawn to the sound of the soprano. And then I started to listen to Coltrane and people like Sam Rivers, another soprano, Wayne Shorter, of course. Mm-hmm. But primarily it would have been Steve Lacy. So I was in my first year at York University, my first and only year at York, and first month I was there, I fell on the portable stairs. I don't condone this way of buying your instrument, but I fell on the portable stairs because they were slimy, they were slippery, because of the overhead, they were mossy. And I fell and I broke my ankle, and I was hovering around on crutches up there, and somebody in the administration saw me and said, "Oh, poor you, I don't know what happened." And I said, "Well, I fell on some portable stairs." She said, "Here?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, you know what, you could get some money for that."
And there was a law school
oh,
just
really?
around.
Yeah. And she said, what happened? And I told her, she said, well, go to the administration and say you had this accident, because I was taking taxis. So in the end, we had an out-of-court settlement for $612.
Of course, every year you have to play at their graduation ceremonies.
I don't know. I don't think that story's ever been on record, but anyway, there we go.
So it's just the saxophone and the flute became your instrument?
Yeah. I mean, I own a tenor and I have an alto, but I decided that I thought I should just focus, on one thing.